We're now going to talk of half steps and whole steps, right? So what is a half step? Well, a half step is really just the distance between two notes on the keyboard, right? It's the smallest distance we can have on the piano. That's what a half step is. So let me give a practical example. If we have these notes, these two notes, we'll say these notes are a half step apart. See, the software on the screen says C minor second, right? Well, that's not really that because that's really another way of saying a half step, right? So we'll get to that later when we're talking on intervals, right? So now we're talking about let's just talk about half steps. So if I were to now when counting the piano, we so remember the piano has 12 notes, and every other thing is just a repetition, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then we start all over again, right? So you realize that this is how we move chromatically, right? One note after the other. So when you make this move from one note to the next note, that is a half step. And you realize you find that there is no spacing between no note, no other note in between them, right? That will be the same for this. And it will be the same for this, right? This is a half step because there's really no note in between, right? Okay, but if we did something of this nature, you see, we are moving from one blank note to the other. So sometimes, especially when I was much younger, when I was just starting out, I always thought of this as that this should be a half step because we're moving from one note to the other. But the truth is, we are not really moving from one note to the other. We were doing this. Remember, I said when we are counting on the piano, this is how we count automatically, right? So what we are really doing now is we're doing this. This is the half step, and then we're taking another half step. So then that will give us a whole step. Now that's what a whole step is. The whole step is just two half steps combined. So moving from one note to the corresponding next, and then to the corresponding next, and then we'll have the whole step. So then this will be a whole step because you see, and another way of identifying the whole step is you'd always find a note in between. So this is the whole step. This is a whole step because there is no in between. This is a whole step because there is no in between. Now this is also a whole step. And this is another one of those combinations that I was sort of tempted to be like, oh, to say, oh, this should be a half step because we're moving from one note to the other. But remember, guys, again, we are counting like this. And if you look at this, you see that there is a note in between, right? So this is the whole step. Guys, all you really need to do is practice, practice, and practice. Practice wherever you make a mistake. Maybe if you're not sure of something, you could always revisit uh, this channel, watch this video again, and be sure of what you're trying to learn. So, what is a scale? You could simply define a scale as a combination of notes or a set of notes together, which we use in a particular or at a particular moment to play music. I think down the road that will make sense, and you could probably find a better definition for that. But that's just what I could come up with at the time, right? So let me do that practically, so you will really get to understand what a scale is. So oftentimes when if you've ever been around musicians playing, you heard them say something like playing the key of C, playing the key of D, playing the key of this, and the key of that. Now the question is, what do they even mean? So it's really just another way of saying play within this key that has this particular scale or this particular combination of notes. So then, what is a scale practically, right? If you take a note, like the note C, for instance, right? Say I wanted to identify C. Now, oh, that reminds me. So you would find that there are many types of scales. You hear of the major scale, the minor scale, and the diminished scale. And there are just so many kinds of scales, and the possibilities are endless, right? But for today, we are going to be talking about the major scale. And this is one of the most important skills. Like you have to master it because 95% of music, if I'm not wrong, is played on the major scale. And you actually have to learn the major and the minor scale. But I'm going to teach you the major scale And by teaching you the major scale, you will know the minor scale, and you would see what that means. Okay, so say for instance we had this key C or this note C, and we wanted to play the C major scale, right? Actually, there's a formula to this because we have no idea which notes to combine, what to do, right? So what we simply really, all we really just need to do is apply a formula. And what's the formula for building a major scale? It goes, it's a whole step. So take two whole steps, then take a half step, then take three whole steps, then take one half step. That doesn't make any sense, I understand, right? But I'm going to show you practically. So remember, I said a whole step is like moving two notes, right? So two half steps. So when you want to do your C major scale, keep having in mind your formula. What you really do is, so say for instance, you press the notes. This is my C note or the key of C, and I want to build the major scale, the C major scale. I would hold down that note, and from this note, I'm going to take a whole step. So that's one whole step. And remember, I said you take two whole steps first, right? So I've taken one whole step. I have my first two notes of the C major scale, and then I take another whole step from this note, right? I take another whole step from this note. So I have my first three notes of the C major scale. So what did I do? I took two whole steps from this note. So I took a whole step from here, and then I took a whole step from here. So that makes two whole steps. Now then I have to take a half step, right? So then I take the half step from here. Remember, it's a half step because you see there is no note in between these two. And yeah, so it's a half step, right? So I've taken two whole steps, and I'm taking a half step from this note, and then I have my first four notes of the major scale. And if you've come this far, then you're doing a great job, right? Um, good. So it says two whole steps, a half step, and then three whole steps from there. So now we've taken two whole steps, so whole step, then whole step, so whole step here, then whole step here to get this, then half step, and then we want to take a whole step from this one to start our cycle of three whole steps or our series of three whole steps, right? So we're taking a whole step from the whole step from this note. So, and if we see all what we have together, we realize that we have our first five notes of the C major scale. Now we're taking one of the three whole steps, right? Let's take the second from here. 1, 2, 3. So now this is we have our six first notes or our six notes of the we have six of our notes of the C major scale, right? And then we take another whole step from here to complete a series of three whole steps. So let's recap. We took two whole steps, one whole step, two whole steps, right? And then we took a half step from this node, and then we took a whole step from here, a whole step from here, and another whole step from here to give us these first six notes or first seven notes, right? Yeah. Now remember, the formula doesn't end there. The formula says you take one more whole step. Oh, sorry, one more half step, not whole step, from this note, right? So you take a half step from this note. Remember, it's a half step because there's no note in between them, right? So we have two whole steps, a half step, three whole steps, then one last half step. And then we have our C major scale. If we play these notes together, all of these notes comprise the notes of the C major scale, right? So remember the formula says two whole steps, one half step, three whole steps, one half step. To get the C major, or sorry, the major scale formula is the formula you use to get the major scale for any key, not just C, right? So that would give us this note. So that would mean that whensoever we are, or we say we are playing the key of C, These are the notes that we should be using, right? These are the notes that should comprise our melody and our chords, and you understand what that means, right? Our melody and our chords, these are the notes that should comprise our music. These are the notes we should be using in our music whenever we are in that key, right? Yeah, good. So let's I mean let's try another key. Let's try another key. Let's say we are in the key of A flat. Good. We want to build the E flat or the G sharp. Remember, accidental. It's either A flat or G sharp. For now, call it A flat though. So we want to build the A flat major scale. The first thing we do is we find our A flat notes, which would be this note, and then from these notes, we start doing our scale. We start applying the formula. So the formula says two whole steps, one half step, and then two whole step. I'm sorry, and then three whole steps, and then one half step. So we take the first two whole steps, right? So we take a whole step from here, then a whole step from here, and then you should find that we have our first three notes. And then it says after you take the first two whole steps, you take a half step, right? So we take a half step from here, and you will see that we have our first four notes. Now, once you've taken two whole steps, one half step, you now have to take three whole steps, right? So let's begin the first of our series of three whole steps from this note, right? So we are taking a whole step from here, which should be D, then another whole step from here, which should be D, then another whole step from here, which should be D. And if I played all the notes that we have already, you see that we have our first seven notes. We have two whole steps, one half step, three whole steps, so whole step, sorry, two whole steps, two whole steps, so we have two whole steps, one half step, three whole steps to give us this. And then now we have to take one last half step to complete our scale. So we take a half step from here, all right? And then you see that we have our A flat major scale. Remember, it's a formula for the major scale. Now, let me give you, this is how when I was much younger, or when I was starting out on the piano, to make sure that I was playing the right thing and make sure that I was getting my skill correct with all the theory and all the formulas. Uh, I'll usually play out all the notes once I've built my skill. I'll usually just play out all the notes in a sequence, like moving from up to down or from left to right, and get the sound. Because if played correctly, then the famous soft notations of music, do re mi fa sol la ti do, that's the sound you should get, right? So do, I'm not a singer, right? Do. So let me play all the notes, right? Let me go to the key of C so that this will be easier for you. Do, and then I'll sing out all the notes, right? Do re mi, do re mi fa sol la ti do, do re mi fa sol la ti do. Do you get that sound? See, and those were just the notes of the C major scale. So now you have an idea and you understand how the soft notations came, how where they came from, right? That's where it came from. That's where the sound came from building a major scale, right? That's how you get the soft notations. That's how you get your major scale by applying the formula. And so now we have our major scale. Now, the question I used to ask myself was, so what do I do with this major scale? So am I just going to like, for instance, oh, that reminds me when I started on the piano. So I watched someone play, and this guy he played hymns on the piano. So actually, it was my elder brother at the time. So he played this song. I don't know if common song, but the song was something like it's me, oh Lord, something of that sort. So the way he would play it back then was something like this, yeah, and then the bass would go. So together you have that was what, and that's literally how I was playing my first song on the piano back in the day. So imagine that we had to play all the My Hallelujah and all the songs and all the nice songs that we have today that we I'm not sure you'd want to learn this piano, right? Because that's quite boring. You can't play songs with like one note, one like one finger. That doesn't really make sense, right? Because the piano is an instrument of harmony. So as we go along, you understand what that means better. Uh, so then, how do we play music? Because I mean, we know our skills now. We know our musical alphabet. We know our note names. We know our half steps and whole steps. So, and then we know our major scales. But then, how do we play music? How do we use these tools to play music?